Hello and welcome to Healing Begins Here, brought to you by the Victim Service Center of Central Florida. I'm Olivia Oropeza, the VSC's Prevention Education Manager, and I'm so glad you're joining us. Before we begin, please be advised that today's episode includes conversations about trauma, abuse, and violence. These topics may be difficult for some viewers. If you need support at any point, the Victim Service Center is here for you. We provide free, confidential services to anyone impacted by violence, regardless of age, gender, or background. You can reach us anytime through our 24/7 helpline at 407-500-HEAL or 407-500-4325. Today, we're talking about the different entities that work together to provide survivors of sexual violence with the care and justice they deserve after experiencing sexual assault. In TV shows and movies, we don't always see the coordinated effort that goes on behind the scenes, but in real life, collaboration is the key to justice. To start off, I'm joined by UCF Detective Rick Salcedo to share about the role of law enforcement and how they work alongside other entities to support survivors. Rick, thank you so much for being here today.
You're welcome. Glad to be here.
Awesome. So to start, can you talk a little bit about how law enforcement works to respond to survivors? What happens when a survivor calls and reports sexual assault?
So when a survivor calls 911 to report a sexual assault, the first person they're going to see is a uniformed patrol officer. That uniformed patrol officer is going to conduct the preliminary investigation. That's the who is the perpetrator, what happened, how it happened, and then when, because it's very important. We have a very small opportunity to collect evidence, and then where it happened, where the crime happened, because that's who is going to investigate the case, what agency is going to investigate the case. Okay. So from there, once he gathers all that information, he'll contact a detective. I'll then respond. I'll then conduct a more thorough interview with the survivor. I'm going to focus more on the evidence collection and building a case for the prosecutor.
Okay, and so you said a patrol officer comes out first and then a detective follows up with more of those details, that forensic evidence collection, and you mentioned a very short window for that collection. Can you tell us what that window is and why it's important?
120 hours, so we have 5 days to collect evidence from their body.
Okay, 5 days to collect evidence post-assault. So as soon as you talk with a survivor, let them know that that's their right, that opportunity exists for them, and see if they want to get that done.
So that clock ticks immediately after the sexual assault.
Gotcha. So why is the response from law enforcement in that initial interaction with a survivor so important? What do we do as law enforcement to make sure that they feel safe and supported in those moments?
So in the past, I started this work 26 years ago, and we definitely did things differently back then. We weren't trained very well on the trauma and the brain, how it functions. So we, back then, we were taught that if you were face danger, you would either fight or flight. And that's all we knew. We didn't know anything about how someone would go into survival mode and just freeze and just go along with it. So now that we know how the brain functions, things are a little bit differently. We're trained a little bit differently. Back then I used to question, why didn't she fight back? Why didn't she run away?
Right.
What we know now, there's, through research, that we do what the brain tells us to do, physically and all that. So with that, we also thought that victims would be able to tell us their stories in chronological order. We now know that they have fragmented memories. Okay? We may not be able to remember all the details of what happened that day. It takes up to 96 hours to remember all those details. It's very important that we do a follow-up interview with our survivors and all that to build that case. So now that we know all this stuff, we didn't treat them badly, but now we know that we don't need to question them as much as we did back then.
Right. So it sounds like what you're saying is sometimes this evidence of trauma shows up as kind of looking suspicious if you weren't trained on trauma-informed responses, on how the brain works, on how the body likely freezes in moments of assault or fear that intense. Right. So I'm glad to hear that, kind of as we increase our understanding and our learning and we increase our training, and so now we have some of those pieces. So can you talk to me a little bit more about how, those pieces of science and understanding have come to improve those responses and then improve, what you see in survivors' healing journeys?
So in the past, we didn't, to be honest with you, we didn't always start by believing.
Yeah.
We always questioned these type of cases, maybe they just regretted it and all that stuff, right? But now we respond with compassion. Right? We respond as though there is merit for every disclosure. We respond that with support and empathy rather than doubt and blame.
Yeah.
That's what we do differently than we did back then. Now that we know about trauma, instead of questioning about why didn't you fight back, we'll just document that stuff. So we listen, and instead of judging, we'll just listen and document all this stuff. And it's our job to prove that they were raped. It's not their job. It's our job to put the pieces of the puzzle together, why they acted this way, and then we'll put that together in a case packet and hopefully get a prosecution out of it, get a conviction out of it.
That's really great to hear that those responses are improving and, starting by believing. That's something we say at Victim Service Center all the time, because we know it's so hard for somebody to pick up that phone, to call, and to let us know that this has happened to them. So we start by believing. You made a great point here about, working with other entities for the forensic evidence collection, for getting trained on that trauma-informed components. Can you talk a little bit more about the collaboration that law enforcement does with maybe, forensic analysts or with those same nurses?
Yes. So we call this team Sexual Assault Response Team. It's law enforcement. We conduct the law enforcement investigation, the criminal investigation, and then we reach out to the victim advocates. They handle all of the victim's needs, emotional needs, physical needs, relocation, that type of stuff. They also contact the forensic nurse examiner for us to respond to the sexual assault treatment facility. So after I conduct my investigation, I bring my victim, my survivor, to the sexual assault treatment facility where we meet with a nurse. I tell the nurse what they disclose to me. The nurse will then re-interview the survivor and determine what type of evidence do I need to collect from her body. Okay? How long has it been? If it's involving alcohol or drugs, we request a urine and blood sample. So we can also submit that stuff, right? And they also give them STD treatment, which is great for our survivors.
Right.
So after that, after they collect the evidence, they turn that back over to us. We now submit it to the Florida Department of Law Enforcement DNA lab. They're the ones that analyze all this evidence, and then they report back to us. Hopefully they identified the foreign DNA from the body that we collected the evidence from. And then from there, we put this nice case packet together. We present it to the prosecutor, and it's their job to present it to a jury, and hopefully we get justice for the survivors.
So it really is a collaborative team effort, from law enforcement to those forensic nurses to the DNA analysis and the state attorney's office to help prosecute and get justice for that survivor.
Yes, and if someone drops the ball, any one of us drops the ball, it can ruin the entire case.
Right.
And now it's our fault that the victim didn't get that conviction, that justice.
Right, and so it's so important then for community members to know that this sexual assault response team exists, and that every piece of the puzzle is important. Everyone's role there is super important.
Yes.
Especially since we know sexual violence is a lot more prevalent than many people would know right off of the bat. Especially you work at UCF on campus, probably a lot of instances with college students as well, I imagine.
Yes, unfortunately, it's still the most underreported crime.
Yeah.
They always have that survivor always has that fear, am I going to be believed when I disclose? And that's the biggest thing. And I'm hoping that with this type of show that we can reach more people out there, and we can say, hey, come report it, and we'll explain everything, the whole process to you.
Definitely.
And you can decide which direction you want to go.
That's great. A level of empowerment for someone whose control maybe has already been taken from them.
Absolutely.
So as we wrap up our show today, for any survivors who may be watching, who maybe are questioning whether they should reach out to law enforcement, what is some encouragement or advice you could offer to them?
Like I already mentioned, it's the most underreported crime because they fear that it won't be believed. I'll tell you this, the new officers that we train, we're always going to start by believing. We know about the trauma-informed approach. We know how to use the victim-centered approach. And the most important thing, though, is you need to report it. We'd like for you to report it as soon as possible. So you have that short window of opportunity to collect that evidence from you.
Right.
Now, you can always decide later, I don't want to go forward with this, or we can collect the evidence, and then you can decide later to go forward with it. So that's the most important thing, is reporting it.
Yeah.
And just remember, the new officers that we're training now, even the old officers who've taken our courses, that we're going to treat you just like we want one of our family members treated, our friends treated, and our colleagues treated. We're going to treat you with the respect and dignity that you deserve as a survivor.
Thank you so much, Detective Salcedo, for being here today and for sharing that important piece of information for our viewers and for our survivors. So the work detectives and other law enforcement agencies do every day to support survivors is so important, but it's only one piece of the puzzle. Another critical part of this response is forensic evidence collection, which can both support survivors in their healing journey and strengthen investigations. Up next, we'll be hearing from Mary Yoder, a forensic nurse examiner from Volusia County, who will share why these exams matter, how nurses collaborate with law enforcement and advocates, and unique ways her role makes a difference. Stay with us. Welcome back to Healing Begins Here. In our last segment, we heard from a UCF detective about the critical role law enforcement plays in responding to sexual violence. Now we're going to shift to the medical side of the coordinated response. When someone experiences sexual violence, one of the most important steps in both their healing journey and the pursuit of justice is the forensic evidence collection. These exams are conducted by specially trained forensic nurse examiners, sometimes referred to as sexual assault nurse examiners, or SANEs, who not only collect vital evidence after an assault, but also provide compassionate, trauma-informed care to their patients in one of the most difficult moments of their lives. I'm honored to be joined today by Mary Yoder, a forensic nurse examiner from Volusia County, to talk with us about the importance of forensic exams and trauma-informed care for people who have experienced sexual violence. Mary, thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, my pleasure.
Can you start by sharing with us a little bit about the role of a forensic nurse examiner or a SANE nurse for a patient post-sexual assault?
So we meet the patient. We're a hospital-based system, typically in Central Florida, and we meet the patient first. So a lot of times we're checking them out medically, most importantly, looking for the injuries and so forth, and then we're giving them the options that they have if they want to do some evidence collection, checking for injuries, writing down their story.
How do you ensure that process is trauma-informed and patient-centered while you're working with that individual who's just in the midst of trauma?
So the training is very important, as with any role. And then I say every case is like a snowflake. Everyone is different, every case is different, every scenario is different, every patient is different. So I often tell the team, read the room. With your experience, with your training, figure out kind of where you're at. And then a lot of times it's giving them the options, letting them know what's possible, letting them know what we have to offer.
Gotcha.
So
it sounds like you want to make sure that the survivor or patient understands what rights they have and what opportunities are there for them, as well as giving them the option to say, yes, I would like this exam done, yes, I would like this piece done, but not that piece, right? That there's a lot of choice and empowerment in the survivor or patient's hand, right?
Absolutely. In fact, every single piece and part of what's available to them, we let them know. You can do this. I mean, we have STD testing, STD treatment, Plan B, NPEP. We have the option to write out their story for them, asking them details, and a lot of times post-trauma experience, asking certain questions reminds you of things you forgot. So a lot of times the story is different than it was for the police or whoever the first person they told. And that's part of the process. That's to be expected, is all the changing. So we're just one more piece in there that helps you remember, that helps pull a detail out that you didn't remember or didn't think was important.
Right. So you mentioned helping survivors or patients write their stories, get maybe pieces of evidence that they weren't able to remember prior, helping collect some of that physical DNA evidence. What are some of the ways that these exams help in the, maybe prosecution of their abusers or in the potential route to justice for some survivors?
So we are one more piece. We are one more piece that helps. We go to court, we testify regarding our process of what we did, how we collected the evidence. The chain of custody is very important. We're kind of more the red tape, sealed envelope part of it. But it's it's just one more way, it's one more piece that helps. Not always is there a hit with the DNA. You know, you can swab something and not come up with a DNA hit, but the totality, the injury documentation that we do is often very helpful and very powerful in front of a jury as well.
Right, so all of those pieces coming together to try to help paint the picture, to try to help understand the experience that patient had.
Absolutely. It is just one more piece. And then when there is the DNA hit, that's powerful for the patient as well.
Right. Being able to maybe at least get a piece of justice after something like that has happened to them.
Right.
So the big theme of today's episode is the way multiple entities collaborate to help provide justice for survivors. And the way that forensic nurse examiners do that is through that evidence collection, through helping them tell their story, through testifying. Can you talk about the ways that you collaborate with law enforcement and with maybe FDLE or DNA analysis experts to help progress that forward?
Absolutely. One of my favorite parts is that we are a whole team. So law enforcement oftentimes are very helpful encouraging the patient to come seek a forensic exam. Sometimes they're the first ones to tell someone about a forensic exam, what it is, what it entails, what their options are. You know, please come talk to a forensic nurse. So a lot of times that, you know, or a friend, you phone a friend and, hey, this is what happened last night. And they're like, you should go to the hospital.
Yeah.
You know, there's someone there who's trained to help you. And then the advocates, we help coordinate. Everyone helps coordinate because the more hands that are under, the less water runs through.
Right.
So we're just one more set of hands. We help coordinate getting that advocate there. That's the most important because that's the go forward. That's the person you're going to call in a couple of days and say, I absolutely do not remember one thing Mary said, but you know, what am I supposed to do next?
Yeah.
They sit with them in court. They go into the police department with them if they want to have a hand holder.
Yeah.
I say, I'm the swabber, they're the hand holder. And then the police come and they pick up all the evidence. They make sure that ensures the chain of custody goes from my hands to their hands and we're all documented. And all of that is so important because if there isn't a chain of custody that is easy to follow in my hand to your hands, then you're opening the door for
for something else to get in and to fight against, you know, that route of justice.
Absolutely.
So it's very essential then for, you know, your role to be collaborating with law enforcement and with those victim advocates who do that sort of emotional weight bearing.
Absolutely, absolutely. And with that team approach, it's easier for all of us. No one has the sole responsibility for any one given aspect. It's a shared, it's a shared cause.
Right, because you're an expert in the things you're trained in, like the evidence collection, like that patient trauma informed care, whereas law enforcement needs to be focusing on catching maybe the perpetrator or, you know, getting some elements of the crime and the safety for the
Sometimes
victim.
we need instant safety. Absolutely, I try to just stay in my lane.
Amazing. So we know that based off statistics, sexual violence is extremely prevalent, and even if it's not someone, you know, maybe it hasn't happened to us, it's likely happened to somebody that we know. So what would you offer as some advice or encouragement to folks, you know, who are unsure if they want to come forward for an exam or, you know, unsure if they want to come forward and report?
So the first thing I would say is we're going to believe you. You don't have to even know your whole story. You don't have to have a complete memory. You can remember things today that you forgot yesterday. Our training teaches us that is how the body responds to trauma. So just know that you're going to come see someone that believes you. Your story doesn't have to be perfect. Nothing about it has to be perfect. And we're here to support you.
That's a great piece of advice. I know so many people need that word of encouragement and just to know they'll be believed.
Yes, absolutely.
Mary, thank you so much for being here today and for the work you do every day helping survivors.
Oh, Olivia, thank you so much for having me come on. I am thrilled to be here. Thank you so much.
So as we've been exploring in today's episode, collaboration is key. The evidence Mary and her colleagues collect doesn't just stay in the exam room. It's carried forward into the justice process where scientists work to analyze and interpret it in ways that can strengthen cases against offenders. Up next, we'll hear from forensic scientist Dr. Erin Hansen, who will explain how advancements in technology are transforming the way we pursue justice for survivors. Stay with us. Welcome back to Healing Begins Here. In this final segment, we're diving into the science that helps move cases forward and hold perpetrators accountable. The evidence collected by forensic nurses becomes part of a larger process where science and technology play a critical role in building justice. Joining us now is Dr. Erin Hansen, a professor of forensic science whose research specializes in DNA analysis. She's here to talk about how advances in forensic science are shaping investigations, strengthening cases, and ultimately helping to bring closure and justice to survivors. Dr. Hansen, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. So to start off, could you talk to us a little bit about your background in forensic science and DNA analysis, and why is this important when we're talking about sexual assault?
So forensic science is really science exercised in the service of law. So we're the people that go out to crime scenes and collect evidence. We're the people in the lab that analyze it and interpret it and then help present that in court. For me, I'm a forensic science researcher. So I've been in the research lab and we get to work on developing new techniques to fill gaps or limitations in current testing. So that's always been my approach to forensic science, and a lot of my research is focused on late reported or challenging sexual assault evidence. So trying to figure out who left that material behind with less and less material.
When you say material, that means like the DNA evidence, right? The physical things you guys are able to collect and analyze?
Yes, from our side, it's biological material. So
okay.
Body fluids, tissues, whatever would potentially have DNA that we could then determine who left that behind and get their DNA profile from.
I see, who it belongs to there.
Yes.
So DNA analysis, from my understanding, has come a long way over the past couple years. Could you talk to me about some of the ways that you've seen that advance or become more useful in helping with sexual assault cases?
There's so many new techniques out there. We could spend a whole day talking about all of them. But definitely, Y chromosome testing, focusing on the male contributor, instrumentation like rapid DNA, next generation sequencing, or even genetic genealogy, which a lot of people have heard about because it's pretty popular in the news these days.
Yeah.
All of those are these new tools that we have to advance casework and advance trying to get that material or those genetic profiles out of that material.
So a lot of advancements.
A lot of advancements.
So some that maybe someone might be interested in might be that genealogy that you mentioned, and maybe we've heard a little bit about rapid DNA. Could you explain more about both of those?
Sure. Rapid DNA is pretty interesting. It's now a 1-unit instrument that you can put a sample in and you get a DNA profile out 90 minutes later.
Wow.
So really accelerating that process of how to get investigative leads faster for law enforcement. So it feeds back into the law enforcement side of things as well. So we work on an area of it where we're looking specifically at sexual assault evidence and how we can develop protocols to get that type of evidence analyzed on these instruments. And so the idea would be have one of these instruments on site when a rape exam is going on or a SANE exam. Can you be developing investigative leads for law enforcement during that whole process to get it going even faster? Could you get a lead before the month-long process that it would normally take?
We know that timing is so crucial in those moments.
Yes.
Getting a victim or survivor into that exam quickly.
Yes.
Maybe getting that evidence collected quickly and using a rapid DNA, what did you call it, instrument?
Yes.
And so what were the times looking like before the rapid DNA kind of came about? How long would someone on average wait to sort of get a read back?
I mean, law enforcement could be waiting, months for a DNA turnaround just because there's so many cases coming in and it's when yours comes in, the queue and can get solved. So the actual procedures themselves may not take that long, but it's the whole process of generating that, evaluating the reports and all of that stuff.
I see.
So rapid DNA really kind of just gives you that lead in 90 minutes so that you could, hopefully
go after someone.
Yes,
Make
advance
the
that
place a
even
little
quicker.
safer for everyone else quickly.
Yeah, so hopefully that's where we'll start seeing that technology kind of really play into sexual assault cases as well.
Very cool. What about genealogy? You mentioned that. I'm not sure I've heard of it. Could you talk about it a little bit?
Yeah, so forensic investigative genetic genealogy is a new technique that really became popular in 2018 with the Golden State serial killer case. If everybody heard about that and how that got solved, that was kind of the first public case where that was used. And it's basically, you have tests like Ancestry and 23andMe that people do, millions of people do. Well, there's two databases that hold some of that data from people that have taken those kits that we can develop the same type of profile from an evidence sample, upload it to those databases, and get new DNA matches that perhaps we didn't have. Everybody's used to the traditional, you upload a DNA profile to CODIS and try to get a hit, but there's often many times where you don't get a hit or you don't get a match to someone in the CODIS database, and that's where we end up with cold cases. You could have the best DNA profile, but if it can't match to someone, it just goes cold. Now we can take those samples and develop these SNP profiles, is what they are, upload them into one of two databases that are available for law enforcement use, and what you get back is this list of DNA matches to that unknown sample. So then the genealogists come in and develop these genetic networks of all the different matches and how they relate to that unknown individual, and you're kind of reverse engineering the genealogy in order to identify who that person is. Yeah, so I feel like every episode of Dateline and things these days have genetic genealogy in it, but hopefully we're going to start seeing it move from just solving these cold cases into more active cases. So not letting it go decades of being cold. Let's apply this technique now. And the first use of that really in an active case was the recent Idaho case, where the 4 college students were killed. Genetic genealogy was used in that. So that was the first time it was kind of more in an active case. So hopefully.
And so they were able to find the perpetrator based off of that genealogy, and
that gave them a surname or a last name to kind of focus on. And then with their other evidence, they were able to put those pieces together and say, okay, I think this is our suspect. And then everything starts to fall into place. So hopefully that will serve as kind of a model to say, let's get this technology in there, not just solving these cold cases, which are still important, but so much time has passed that
not just as a last resort, but as something that is seen as effective, useful right now.
Yeah, so
very cool.
So you'll definitely be hearing about that. That's pretty popular these days, just because it's such a powerful tool, and it's really using existing stuff that we already have, DNA profiles, DNA samples, but it really relies on trust from the public to upload their DNA into these databases, because we're not searching Ancestry or 20, that's the confusion. So law enforcement doesn't have access to like the 23andMe or Ancestry.
It's just a similar system,
yes, someone has to go upload to a separate database. So if anyone out there is interested in helping law enforcement in those purposes, then opt in, for law enforcement searches if you go into these databases.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah.
Well, that's great to hear that there are a lot of advancements coming forward to help provide that justice for survivors, and some really cool scientific and technological advances going on. Yeah. Especially when it's used to kind of solve some of those cold cases that people are kind of itching over, or just really want to see a conclusion to.
Yeah, it's been a very active period. Even as scientists, we kind of get in these lulls where we're doing the same type of stuff. So to see all these new tools coming up, and it's really kind of very exciting, even from a scientist standpoint.
Yeah. Well, to wrap up today, we've been talking about how different entities collaborate to provide justice for survivors. And so you being sort of that DNA analysis research portion, can you share a little bit about how that, connects with all of these other entities to work together for survivors?
Definitely. Anything that we do on a research standpoint has to fit into the workflows for normal law enforcement, SANE nurses, operational forensics labs. Anything we do has to be relevant and usable for them. So we always have to know what's going on in their process, what their rules and regulations are, and then where they're frustrated, where their limitations are. And that's where we come in on a research standpoint to say, is there anything we could develop for you that would help get rid of that limitation or get rid of that gap, but do it in a way that it can actually be transitioned into their workflow without it being so much extra work for them or extra technology and all of this extra that they would need.
Yeah.
So there's always this kind of feedback loop between us and all of the different agencies involved along the way.
Very cool. What do you need? Maybe we can help research and develop it.
And that's the fun side. We get to be in the lab to do that side of things and hopefully see things advance and see these cases come along.
Very cool. Well, Dr. Hansen, thank you so much for being here today and for sharing about all of the awesome work you're doing.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. It's incredible to hear how far forensic technology has come and how it continues to evolve, making it harder for perpetrators to escape accountability and ensuring survivors' experiences are backed by powerful evidence. As we wrap up today's episode, I want to remind you that the key theme today among all these expert voices is collaboration. Each professional we heard from, whether it's law enforcement, nurses, or scientists, plays a vital role in the coordinated effort to help survivors feel supported and obtain justice. In a similar vein, we all have the power to make a difference in the lives of survivors by following a simple rule: start by believing. Statistics tell us that everyone knows someone who has experienced sexual violence. When we start by believing, we make sure that no one has to suffer in silence. If you or someone you know has experienced sexual assault, please know that you are not alone. The Victim Service Center is here for you with free, confidential support available 24/7 at 407-500-HEAL or 407-500-4325. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Healing Begins Here. Until next time, take care of yourselves, each other, and remember, you are not alone.